Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. It's day 2 of the government shutdown. House Republican leaders this morning addressed concerns, attempting to clarify why they reject Democrats' counter proposal. We have the updates there. President Trump deciding which agencies and projects to cut amid the government shutdown. What Trump says about the agencies he's considering. A terror attack on a synagogue in the UK leaves 2 dead and 3 seriously wounded. Police say they have identified the suspect. A flotilla bound for Gaza has been intercepted. The latest on the passengers and what happens next.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is Thursday, October 2nd. I'm Stephanie Cox. 2 people were killed and 3 others seriously wounded in a synagogue attack in Manchester, UK today. Authorities said the suspect was killed by British police. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he was shocked by the attack. Here he is.
I'm on my way back to London. When I arrive, I will chair an emergency COBRA meeting. I'm already able to say that additional police assets are being deployed to synagogues across the country, and we will do everything to keep our Jewish community safe.
The attack happened today on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Greater Manchester Police said they were called to the Heaton Park Synagogue this morning. The caller said he witnessed a car being driven towards bystanders and that 1 man had been stabbed. Video captured police with their guns trained on the suspect. Footage showed officers yelling at bystanders to stand back, saying the suspect had a bomb. British authorities are calling the incident a terror attack. And while the government remains shut here in the U.S., the Trump administration is placing holds on some federal funding. Billions of dollars in projects have been paused or canceled. Here are the details.
The Department of Energy has announced more than 200 renewable energy projects are being canceled. The move, it says, will save taxpayers more than $7.5 billion. The administration says it will cut climate-related funding across 16 states, including for projects in California, New York, and Massachusetts. White House Budget Director Russ Vought described the cancellations as ending what he called green new scam funding. This comes as President Trump said on social media that Republicans should make use of the shutdown to clear out, quote, dead wood, waste, and fraud. Trump said billions could be saved. In New York City, $18 billion in federal support for the Hudson River Tunnel and the 2nd Avenue subway has been put on hold. Vought said the step was taken to ensure spending was not based on what he called unconstitutional DEI principles. The Transportation Department said Wednesday it was reviewing whether any unconstitutional practices were occurring at the 2 projects.
Unfortunately, the previous administration had loaded up every grant agreement with their own social justice priorities, none of which were required by statute.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul told reporters Wednesday that Washington has decided to put their interpretation of proper culture ahead of the country's needs.
And President Trump will be meeting with Russ Vought, Director of the Office of Management and Budget, amid the government shutdown. In a post on Truth Social today, Trump said he will meet with Vought and determine which of the many Democrat agencies he recommends cutting. Trump called most of the agencies a, quote, political scam and said he and Vought will determine whether the cuts are temporary or permanent. In an interview with One American News set to air today, Trump also commented on his plan.
Well, there could be firings, and that's their fault, and it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could say, a lot of people are saying, Trump wanted this, that I wanted this closing, and I didn't want it. But a lot of people are saying it because I'm allowed to cut things that should have never been approved in the first place, and I will probably do that.
Vought has said that federal workers could expect mass firings within a day or 2. According to a memo circulated by his office, agencies should prepare for major reduction in force plans. And the S&P 500 and NASDAQ opened at record highs today following weaker than expected private payroll data yesterday. The news fueled hopes for interest rate cuts even as the government shutdown limits economic reporting. Traders are relying on alternative data, including yesterday's ADP jobs report, which showed a decline of 32,000 private sector jobs in September. The shutdown has forced the postponement of key government reports. That includes weekly jobless claims and Bureau of Labor Statistics data. That leaves investors to weigh corporate earnings and market trends instead. Despite the data gap, the S&P 500 and Dow Jones reached record highs yesterday, and optimism about AI and rate cuts continues to support equities. Precious metals surged, with gold trading above $3,900 an ounce as investors sought safe havens amid economic uncertainty. And the government shutdown has put the brakes on the flow of federal economic data, as you've heard. But more broadly, history does show that the economy usually doesn't suffer when the government is closed. Here's why.
The U.S. government shutdown has thrown the brakes on the flow of federal economic data at a moment of uncertainty. But if history is any guide, the shutdown itself is unlikely to have a lasting impact on the U.S. economy. Part of the reason is the previous 20 shutdowns have been short, lasting about a week or less. They are a headache for the Federal Reserve, especially now as policymakers seek clarity on the employment picture and inflation. Those policymakers won't get the monthly jobs report and other data until the government reopens. They will have to rely on private surveys. Sometimes those are viewed as a poor proxy for the government data. The Fed cut interest rates last month for the first time since December on growing concern about the job market. Financial markets see a near certainty of another rate cut at the central bank's next meeting this month. Though Bonrion Capital Management founder and CEO Shana Orzik-Sizzle says the shutdown could impact this.
I do think the lack of economic data of some of the larger economic data points that the Fed pays attention to could delay the Fed from cutting further.
Meanwhile, even though hundreds of thousands of federal workers are on furlough and a range of important government services are suspended, shutdowns themselves don't typically move the needle for the economy. It depends on what's happening around the shutdown. Stocks took a hit during the last shutdown in 2018, but rebounded quickly, according to Robert Conzo, CEO and managing director of the Wealth Alliance.
Last one was during the Trump era, was 35 days from December of 18 to January of 19. The market dropped, and it started a week before the actual shutdown, so there was a lot of anticipation. Dropped around 15%, then quickly came back and rose past that. Typically, there's headline risk, markets drop, but then they typically come back.
And on trade, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the federal government will support American farmers amid China's refusal to buy U.S. soybeans. In an interview with CNBC, Bessent said today he met with President Trump and the Secretary of Agriculture. Here's Bessent.
We have great Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. Three of us were in the Oval yesterday, and you should expect some news on Tuesday on substantial support for our farmers, especially the soybean farmers. They've had President Trump's back, and we've got their back.
Chinese importers have not yet bought soybeans from the U.S. harvest this fall amid the trade war. This is costing U.S. farmers billions of dollars in lost sales. Bessent said it's unfortunate that China is using American soybean farmers as a hostage or pawn in the trade negotiation. The secretary is still hopeful about a major breakthrough in trade negotiations with China. He expects that to happen during the next round of talks. That will be an in-person meeting between Trump and Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. It's set for late October at the APEC summit in South Korea. And Democratic and Republican lawmakers still at loggerheads over funding the government. We've got political and economic experts to break it all down. And amid that government shutdown, the Trump administration is pausing or canceling billions in government funding. What's on the chopping block? All that after this. Welcome back. As you've heard, it's day 2 of the first government shutdown in 6 years. Democrats and Republicans voted against each other's bills yesterday again. This morning, Republicans were eager to clarify their position. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the latest on where negotiations now stand.
This morning, Republican House leaders spoke to reporters with the goal of clarifying why exactly they're opposing the Democrats' counter proposal. Listen.
There's nothing I can pull out of the bill that was a Republican priority to say, oh, we won't do that. Why don't you guys vote for it now? I don't have anything. I didn't put anything in it. The California loophole allows taxpayer-funded Medicaid for illegal aliens. We eliminated that in the big, beautiful bill. Their repeal, their counteroffer is to repeal and reverse that. That would cost $34 billion of U.S. taxpayer funds. Number two, a provision that prohibits Medicaid from paying more for emergency care provided to illegal aliens than it does for American patients.
Johnson doubling down that the responsibility, he says, is 100% on them, referring to Senate Democrats. The Senate won't vote again until Friday. Today they're out for the holiday Yom Kippur. The question now is if Friday's upcoming vote will be an identical replay of what we saw with yesterday's vote in the Senate, as well as the vote before that. A reporter asked the Speaker this morning if senators should stay if that vote fails again on Friday. Speaker Johnson said, of course, and noted that the House will be back next week to hopefully have something else, he says, to work on. That leaves the door open for an alternative continuing resolution to be sent back from the Senate for the House to vote. Perhaps one with minor changes like a shortened extension. We also should take into account that following yesterday's vote, it looks like more bipartisan discussions are shaping up. Listen to this.
As long as members are talking to one another, there's always a chance for a solution. People are talking about all kinds of ideas. I'm not going to speak for my colleagues that are offering different ideas. You can chat with them as well. But there's all kinds of ideas that are being shared, and ideas that some I imagine would support, and ideas some might not support. But without a conversation, you never get to the next step.
So what that senator was referring to was a bipartisan group of senators seen talking on the floor yesterday during votes, but not many details on what exactly they were negotiating. Senate Leader John Thune and Chuck Schumer are expected to speak again about the shutdown, though Thune admitted he doesn't know what will come of that meeting. The broader picture here, though, is that Republicans and Democrats are doubling down on their positions for now.
Thanks so much for that report, Melina. Next, we know a big part of what makes the shutdown different from previous ones is that the Trump administration plans to pursue mass firings of federal workers. Details are sparse on how many or who exactly is first on the chopping block, but the White House says the cuts to federal workforce are imminent. Reporters from several media outlets have pressed House Speaker Mike Johnson on if he feels at all responsible for these permanent firings that are soon to take place. Here's what he said.
Because they have decided to vote to shut the government down, they have now effectively turned off the legislative branch, the Article 2 branch of, or the Article 1, sorry, the Article 1 branch of our government, and they've turned it over to the executive, okay? So in that situation, when Congress turns off the funding and the funding runs out, it is up to the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, to determine how those resources will be spent. He has that responsibility given to him by the Democrats in the Senate. They can't complain about it.
Meanwhile, Democrats say the mass firings won't bully, quote, them into voting for the Republicans' clean stopgap funding bill. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the federal layoffs would be made very soon. She said this morning that the numbers could be in the thousands. Take a listen.
Look, it's likely going to be in the thousands. It's a very good question, and that's something that the Office of Management and Budget and the entire team at the White House here, again, is unfortunately having to work on today. These discussions and these conversations, these meetings would not be happening if the Democrats had voted to keep the government open. We believe there will be a vote taking place tomorrow, and we hope that vote will lead to the government reopening. That's what the president wants to see, and that's what we're working on today.
Yes, the government's still closed for now. A Senate vote kept in place the partisan standoff. Joining us now to discuss that and more is political analyst Jeff Crouere and economist Christian Briggs. Good to have you both here with us today. Jeff, Christian, from a political point of view, Jeff, which party could be most impacted by the shutdown, Republicans or Democrats?
I mean, I think the Democrats will be. I think it's the Schumer shutdown. I think it's really something that the Senate Minority Leader is really doing because he's worried about his own political future in New York. Remember when he agreed to a deal back in March, he got criticized for caving to Donald Trump. And he remembered that. And now he's trying to be tough. And he's trying to pursue this to bolster his own credentials in his own state because he's worried about a challenge from AOC. And I think that's why we had this situation that we're in. I mean, they're trying to undo what was passed in the big, beautiful bill. So we got problems galore here with the Democrats. And that's why three of them have peeled off to support it. But Republicans need five more Democrats to make the 60 threshold to overcome the filibuster. So we'll see. I would think that eventually, over the next few days, some more Democrats will back off, and we'll see the government reopen.
Okay, and I do want to come back to the dynamics at play there amid the lawmakers who are in negotiations. But first, Christian, we heard it earlier, shutdowns don't typically have a huge impact on the economy because they're usually so short. But which part of the economy do you think will feel it most this time?
Well, thanks for having me. That's a great question. I think the economy, you're going to see a lot of it's going to be localized first, especially in the cities that have the largest amount of federal workers, if it goes any length of time. But your point is well made. These typically don't last that long. The Obama did, obviously, his back in the day when he was trying to get the Affordable Care Act. He shut it down for 17 days, and then the Republicans caved. But I would think that in this case, Trump may want to last a little bit longer. His advantage is two things. And what was just said earlier by my colleague there, he's right. I think that this is going to favor the Republicans way more. The areas that could be the most affected, if it goes longer than 2, 3, or 4 weeks, would obviously be the D.C. area, small businesses, because they're going to be all those federal workers furloughed. Other major cities where some of the federal workers will also be furloughed. So there will be some impact from the D.C. area, from the state level, especially in the local, because also you're not collecting taxes. So you're going to have tax collection because the paychecks aren't being put there to the employee. So you got revenues, you have localized businesses that aren't seeing the spending for lunches or daycares or dry cleaners. I mean, I can list a ton of different businesses. So small business could be impacted. But I think that this will be in Trump's advantage the longer it plays out, because I do believe that Chuck Schumer is using the illegal immigrants' health care as a byproduct of the reasoning. And I think he's worried about AOC running in his primary, winning the Senate seat, and taking away the seat he's had for all those years. So I think it's a two-part issue for Chuck Schumer and the Democrats.
All right, so with that in mind, Jeff, this political dynamic that we've painted here, you've mentioned you do think some Democrats will cross over. How do you think that will happen, and why?
Well, I mean, I think they do it because of pressure. They do it because of their constituents saying, hey, we want the government open, because people have worries about getting their services. I mean, government shutdowns are something that there's always an outcry about. Usually the Republicans are on the losing end of these things. Of course, the media normally blames the Republicans. But I think this time it's a different dynamic due to the internal politics that the Democrats have, due to the power that President Trump is now wielding here. So I think that you're going to see a few more peel off in the days ahead and support this thing. The president's also making fun of them with memes. They don't like that. They're on the receiving end of ridicule. And they're claiming that, the president's being racist. I don't think most of the American people are buying it. I think they understand the terminology being used, that this is, Chuck Schumer's deal. Remember back in March, when this last big deal was continued, you had 10 Democrats go along with the Republicans. So I think you've got the ones that I would look for would be the Democrats that are in purple states. The Democrats that are not totally in left-wing blue states, the ones that are more susceptible to challenges, those would be the ones I think are more likely to peel off and support the president and get this, and the Republicans, and get this government back open again.
All right, and back on the economy, actually we mentioned the kind of pressure that could be coming down as if it draws out and people's lives are more affected. And you also spoke to that, Christian, but more broadly, if we take a step back at the state of the economy as a whole, with so many elements in flux right now in particular, do you think that is likely to influence negotiations?
It'll be a part of it, sure. We're definitely seeing a slowdown in the labor force. Revisions now are consistent with each month that are the job numbers come out, well, the next month they revise them down. So we're going into a negative job growth territory. We're contracting, at least in labor force. And what's interesting, and again, you make a good point, how the effectiveness of that could sway some of the Democrats to cross the line. I think you got two advantages here in Trump's favor: the political power of Trump and the Republicans right now, and that is economy. That's the economy that they want, to where they can at least be logical in their assertion and why they're letting the Democrats do what they do, because it's going to bring economic power back to the Republicans even more. And two, you're going to see Democrats cross that line. Now, it may not be in the next 5 days, could be in the next 10 days, but the economy affects people, especially when you're looking at states that are trying to fill budgets with revenues. And if these markets realize that this could be prolonged, or it could have a detrimental effect to some of their constituents, these guys are going to cross lines. And I think you could see a half a point maybe off the GDP. Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent said this morning that this could affect the GDP if it's prolonged. I agree 100%. So economy, political power, and positioning. How does the American people look at this in such a way? And I believe Jeff's right. I think Trump's got the upper hand in the negotiations, but economy will affect certainly maybe one or two, maybe three, maybe just enough to cross that line of the Democrats.
Interesting point there. Now, Jeff, something that has come up is how lawmakers, unlike federal workers, continue to receive their paychecks during the shutdown. So the critique here is that there could be more of an incentive to avoid a shutdown if this were changed. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes, I do. My listeners are not very happy with these members of Congress. Every time we look around, they're on vacation. So if you look at who should be getting paid, I think politicians would be last on the list as far as my listeners go, because they rarely work, they rarely accomplish anything, and they always seem to be on either junkets or vacations or big fundraisers. So yeah, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see congressional term limits for one. I'd love to see everything that Congress will not do, like putting limits on their terms, putting limits on their pay. I think they should be paid for the work that they're done, that they're doing, which is really not very much. So yeah, there's a lot of criticism about Congress. I think you look at the approval numbers, and they're terrible for both parties. The Republicans are more popular than the Democrats, but I think the Republican approval ratings are like 29%. Democrats in Congress are like 17%. So the American people really have no use for either party in Congress. And I think for good reason, because we don't see much getting accomplished. We see a lot of perks and vacations. They get rich while they're in office. How does that happen? It just doesn't look good to the American people. And I think they would be wise to make some reforms as far as pay, as far as their perks, to sort of gain more trust with the American people.
And if we're looking back at the impact on jobs, Christian, you mentioned the labor market's trending downward, but also policymakers won't get the monthly jobs report and other data until the government reopens. How could that impact operations? And also, if you'd like to speak more to the GDP that you just mentioned, the impact.
Well, okay, that's a great point, because today, when you look at some of the vital information flow from the federal government, whether it's inflation, whether it's the labor numbers, a host of different statistics that need to be kind of put together in a fairly scheduled manner. This is going to put everything kind of in a little bit of a quandra of wonder and doubt. So when you're looking at a lot of these analysts that are trying to gauge for the benefit of investors or just the economy for budgets, when you don't have access to these numbers on a scheduled basis, it throws everybody off. And I just noticed today, some companies now are trying to make decisions for the fourth quarter, first quarter next year on some hiring practices. There were some notes, and they can't because they don't get some of the statistics. So it's going to make a difference. The markets are going to move regardless. They're going to trade no matter what happens, but they may be on the wrong side of the trade. So investors may decide to pull up money out of the markets. A lot of people are talking about that today. Now, going back to the GDP a second. Okay, again, the GDP is going to be reflective of economic expansion and growth. And our GDP is on fire. There are 3 revisions higher so far in the last, 8 to 12 weeks. So we see the GDP running fairly significant. And yet, when you get the federal spending, not completely cut, but the vast majority is cut, it has an immediate impact on businesses because so many rely on federal funds, especially on the state level, and then it actually goes through and kind of makes its way down to the local communities. So I do see that if this thing lasts more than 2 to 3 weeks, that's an impact. That will impact the GDP, that will impact the markets, and the wealth effect that's been doing so well with the stock market making these new highs. It has created wealth that has encouraged spending. Retail sales have been very good. That could be immediately eliminated with the perception of the slowdown or the way the government hasn't been spending that money could affect immediately the earnings of these companies, and the markets will reflect that quickly. They'll drop like a rock if this thing is prolonged.
Well, with more votes coming very soon, hopefully it all gets wrapped up and pushed forward and the government opens very soon. Otherwise, we'll have to have you back on to give some great advice for people about how to manage the change. Thank you so much, both of you, Jeff Crouere, Christian Briggs. Good to speak with you both.
Thank you so much.
And federal law enforcement agencies have begun operating in Memphis. Top members of the Trump administration met with Tennessee Governor Bill Lee in Memphis yesterday. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and the first arrest stats coming in.
Tennessee Governor Bill Lee says the state is grateful to be a willing partner with Washington.
I'm grateful that President Trump has decided to make a priority of making great cities like Memphis safe cities.
Attorney General Pam Bondi sent a message of support to local cops.
All of the Memphis police officers, all of you, we are here to have your backs. All of the law enforcement officers in this room.
The Attorney General had a stark warning for those who would put their hands on police.
If you touch a law enforcement officer, it is a crime and you are going to jail.
Bondi says officers should be able to fully carry out their duties.
And we want cops to be cops again. You can go out there and you can do your job.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said no amount of gratitude for what cops do is enough.
What you do in difficult places, in dark places, in dangerous places, where politicians spend a lot of time second-guessing you.
Hegseth says the federal government is there to help liberate the police.
To provide National Guardsmen who can secure facilities and secure law enforcement, stand alongside you so you're freed up to go out and provide safety and freedom to the citizens of Memphis, a great American city.
White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller said Washington will provide Memphis with a level of support they can't imagine.
This is a all-of-government unlimited support operation. We are sending in real cops with guns and badges to go out with you on the street every single night making arrests.
Miller said the task force will target crime across the entire city.
The idea that there is a square inch of block in this city where a citizen doesn't feel safe is unacceptable.
FBI data has Memphis topping the list of U.S. cities with the most violent crime, with over 2,500 violent crimes per 100,000 people. Opponents of the deployment say it is an unnecessary federal occupation of a city that instead needs more funding to address poverty and other drivers of crime. Attorney General Pam Bondi released stats for the first 48 hours of the operation. The Memphis Safe Task Force made 53 arrests and seized 20 illegal firearms. A missing juvenile was also located, and 3 firearms were recovered at the home of a murder suspect. The task force is part of a larger effort by President Trump to use National Guard troops and surge federal law enforcement to make American cities safer. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
A collision on the ground at LaGuardia Airport has left 1 crew member hurt. 2 planes operated by Endeavor Air collided on the taxiway last night. The airline is a regional carrier owned by Delta Airlines. Flight 5155 was preparing to depart for Roanoke, Virginia, when its wing slammed into the cockpit window of another jet. That plane had just arrived from Charlotte, North Carolina. Delta says a flight attendant was hurt in the collision but suffered only a minor injury. Passengers from both planes were taken back to the terminal and offered hotel rooms and rebooking. Airport officials say the incident did not affect operations. Delta says it will work with federal investigators to review what happened. And New York State is looking to dramatically increase its giant battery storage plants. The expansion comes amid concerns that the state's electric grid won't be able to provide enough energy in extreme weather events. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the surge in construction.
Outside Buffalo, this lithium-ion battery plant can power 15,000 homes for 2 hours. Chris Linsmeyer of Key Capture Energy says they're helping New York State meet electricity demand.
California and Texas right now are the two leading states, but if you look beyond them, including in New York, including in New England, these are coming in every market across the country. And again, it's really about meeting this growing electricity demand.
Key Capture Energy has connected its battery facility to the grid with a connected transformer substation. The components allow the voltage of electricity to be increased or decreased as required. Linsmeyer assures the public that the system is safe.
You look at the shipping containers behind me, there are hundreds, thousands of cells in each one of them. They are all monitored in real time. Multiple data points are being taken every second. And so if something isn't operating correctly, we can remotely turn off either a small portion, an entire container, or the entire system.
The grid in New York gets its power from a variety of sources, including nuclear, hydroelectric, natural gas, wind, and solar power. Linsmeyer says these battery plants will expand to other parts of the state.
Buffalo, they are coming all across New York and will be located near population centers as needed. So obviously you can think of the Hudson Valley and Long Island and places like that, that these facilities will be coming online in the years ahead.
Some residents around the Buffalo suburb where the battery storage system is located have mixed feelings. Local resident George Williams had this to say.
I think it would be a good thing, especially, in the winter, we get bad winters here, so power goes out, kind of frequently, But so it'd be good to have a good backup plan. But I would still be concerned about the safety aspect of it.
So what is Williams concerned about?
Well, the first thing that would come to my mind is it toxic? What happens if they go bad? And there's lots of residential neighborhoods around here. You hear about some of these battery installations in manufacturing plants. When they catch on fire, they plume toxic smoke everywhere.
Others are confident that the system is safe. Elizabeth Stein is a state policy director at NYU. She says that most people have batteries on their person every day, but she adds that risks posed by large plants should still be considered.
To the extent that larger storage devices could pose any kind of risk to the public, it's really important to make sure that they don't. And that we can achieve the reliability benefits, the huge societal benefits.
New York hopes to increase the number of these battery facilities across the state by 2030. The goal is to make them a routine part of the grid. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Still to come, Ukraine urges European nations to form a united front against Russia. What Kyiv says about Moscow expanding the war. Throwing pots at police, blocking highways. Protests are spreading across China as dissent boils under Beijing's iron grip. We zoom in on the growing unrest. I'm Stephania Cox, and this is World Watch. The global Samud flotilla attempted to break Israel's naval blockade of Gaza. The Israeli Foreign Ministry says all passengers are safe and in good health and will be deported to their home countries. The convoy included European activists, lawmakers, and Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg. Organizers described it as a peaceful civilian mission to deliver aid to Gaza. Israel calls the convoy the Hamas Samud flotilla, saying it serves the interests of the Hamas terror group. Israeli intelligence says some flotilla leaders had ties to terrorist organizations. And in Germany, police arrested 3 men they suspect of planning a serious act of violence against Jewish targets in Germany. The suspects were brought before an investigating judge today at a federal court. Prosecutors suspect the 3 men of being foreign operatives for Hamas. They're also suspected of acquiring guns and ammunition to target Israeli or Jewish institutions in Germany. They were arrested in Berlin yesterday. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging European leaders to form a united front against Russia. NATO members Poland, Estonia, and Romania all report recent airspace violations by Russia. Zelensky is attempting a summit of European Union leaders in Denmark today.
The recent drone incidents across Europe are a clear sign that Russia still feels bold enough to escalate this war. And it was never just about Ukraine. Russia has always aimed to break the West and Europe in particular.
He added that Ukraine is ready to share with European nations how to handle Russian drones. NATO and EU member states recently also agreed to build a so-called drone wall, which would detect and destroy incoming Russian drones. Zelensky praised the idea today, saying it would protect all of Europe. And in more positive news, Russia and Ukraine report exchanging prisoners of war. Both sides say they received over 180 soldiers and 20 civilians. According to Russia, the swap was in line with agreements reached at the last round of peace talks in Istanbul in July. Next, Germany's defense minister also commented on the recent drone incursions by Russia. He highlighted the threat, but said this should not make people forget about Chinese and Russian spy satellites.
We must not overlook the fact that even as we sit here, we are all being observed and filmed by Russian, Chinese, and other satellites.
He added that Germany is addressing drone countermeasures at all levels after recent violations by Russia. And this ranges from laser technology to net firing drones and electronic jamming. But he said that jamming incoming drones becomes increasingly difficult. The defense minister compared it to a never-ending game of cat and mouse to see which side can develop its technology faster. Blocking traffic and even throwing pots and at police officers. Protests erupted across China in the days leading up to yesterday's anniversary, which marks 76 years since the Chinese Communist Party took power. Beijing has been holding events each year to mark the day. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has this report.
In China's southwestern Yunnan province, dozens of street vendors clashed with urban law enforcement and police last Saturday. Vendors threw pots and stools during the confrontation. The clash broke out after local urban law enforcement officers suspended their stalls and asked for extra fees. The vendors refused, saying they had faced eviction before, even after paying what was required. For many vendors, their stall is the family's only income.
Authorities could have asked what our demands are, but they didn't. They just came to evict us. We have to make a living. My kid has to go to school.
When vendors refused to leave, tensions boiled over, leading to clashes with the officers trying to evict them. After one vendor was beaten, others started throwing objects from their booths at the police. Several vendors were reportedly hurt and arrested. Authorities also took some food carts. Similar protests are happening across the country. In central Henan province, street vendors blocked traffic last Thursday to protest the closing of their night market. They want compensation from local authorities. In southern Guangxi province, villagers surrounded police after officers arrested a man defending their rights. The villagers were protesting against a company trying to take their forest land for mining. The crowd left only after police released the man. Up north in Hebei province, residents blocked roads for 2 days outside the local administrative office to protest the demolition of their homes. Their houses were torn down for urban development 7 years ago, but the residents say they still haven't received new housing or compensation to help with the move. Also in Hebei, construction workers blocked a highway toll booth to demand payment. They helped build the highway, but say they haven't been paid a cent.
We put sweat and tears into this, but you didn't pay us after finishing the job. What are you doing?
Local media covered the new highway opening but left out the protest. And further north, in China's Inner Mongolia region, about 200 small business owners protested for 4 days outside the local administrative office against higher heating bills. They clashed briefly with police. After the protest, officials canceled the price hike.
And as the Chinese Communist Party marks 76 years of rule, Chinese people in the U.S. and worldwide are protesting its brutal tyranny. Here's their stories and what they're standing up for. NTD's Flora Hua has this report.
This is the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C. Chinese pro-democracy activists across America gathered to tell the world October 1st is not their national day, but a day of mourning for all of China. During times of peace, tens of millions of Chinese people have died under the CCP's tyranny. From the violent political campaigns and the Great Famine to the Tiananmen Massacre and the COVID-19 pandemic, these Chinese protesters marched in front of the Chinese embassy, Capitol Hill, and the White House. Younger generations also took part in the anti-CCP movement, raising awareness of the Chinese regime's tactics.
On one hand, the CCP maintains authoritarian rule through repression. On the other hand, it uses united front tactics to deceive and divide us.
Moving north to Canada, Taiwanese, Hong Kongers, Tibetans, Uyghurs, and people from different backgrounds also held anti-CCP demonstrations in front of the Chinese consulate.
CCP lies, people die!
It creates controversy around the victims that it creates propaganda about, and it creates fear in the public for speaking out against the persecuted groups.
Falun Gong, a spiritual discipline originated in China, has been persecuted by the CCP for over 25 years. International rights groups report that the regime even steals organs from imprisoned practitioners for huge profits.
The CCP trades in live organs and continuously imprisons dissidents who oppose it. This, among other actions, represents the greatest harm that totalitarianism has inflicted on our present generation of human civilization.
Chinese people in Germany and the Netherlands are also calling for an end to the tyranny of the Chinese Communist Party. Flora Hua, NTD News.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune into China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD. Now, it is day 2 of the first government shutdown in 6 years. Democrats and Republicans voted against each other's bills yesterday again. This morning, Republicans were eager to clarify their positions. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the latest on where negotiations now stand.
This morning, Republican House leaders spoke to reporters with the goal of clarifying why exactly they're opposing the Democrats' counter-proposal. Listen.
There's nothing I can pull out of the bill that was a Republican priority to say, oh, we won't do that. Why don't you guys vote for it now? I don't have anything. I didn't put anything in it. The California loophole allows taxpayer-funded Medicaid for illegal aliens. We eliminated that in the big, beautiful bill. Their repeal, their counteroffer is to repeal and reverse that. That would cost $34 billion of U.S. taxpayer funds. Number 2, a provision that prohibits Medicaid from paying more for emergency care provided to illegal aliens than it does for American patients.
Johnson doubling down that the responsibility, he says, is 100% on them, referring to Senate Democrats. The Senate won't vote again until Friday. Today they're out for the holiday Yom Kippur. The question now is if Friday's upcoming vote will be an identical replay of what we saw with yesterday's vote in the Senate, as well as the vote before that. A reporter asked the Speaker this morning if senators should stay if that vote fails again on Friday. Speaker Johnson said, of course, and noted that the House will be back next week to hopefully have something else, he says, to work on. That leaves the door open for an alternative continuing resolution to be sent back from the Senate for the House to vote. Perhaps one with minor changes like a shortened extension. We also should take into account that following yesterday's vote, it looks like more bipartisan discussions are shaping up. Listen to this.
As long as members are talking to one another, there's always a chance for a solution. People are talking about all kinds of ideas. I'm not going to speak for my colleagues that are offering different ideas. You can chat with them as well. But there's all kinds of ideas that are being shared, and ideas that some I imagine would support, and ideas that some might not support. But without a conversation, you never get to the next step.
So what that senator was referring to was a bipartisan group of senators seen talking on the floor yesterday during votes, but not many details on what exactly they were negotiating. Senate Leader John Thune and Chuck Schumer are expected to speak again about the shutdown, though Thune admitted he doesn't know what will come of that meeting. The broader picture here, though, is that Republicans and Democrats are doubling down on their positions for now.
Thanks to Melina for that report. Now, we know a big part of what makes this shutdown different from previous ones is that the Trump administration plans to pursue mass firings of federal workers. Details are sparse on how many or who exactly is first on the chopping block, but the White House says the cuts to the federal workforce are imminent. Reporters from several media outlets have pressed House Speaker Mike Johnson on if he feels at all responsible for these permanent firings that are soon to take place. Here's what he said.
Because they have decided to vote to shut the government down, they have now effectively turned off the legislative branch, the Article 2 branch of, or the Article 1, sorry, the Article 1 branch of our government, and they've turned it over to the executive, okay? So in that situation, when Congress turns off the funding and the funding runs out, it is up to the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, to determine how those resources will be spent. He has that responsibility given to him by the Democrats in the Senate. They can't complain about it.
Meanwhile, Democrats say the mass firings won't bully them into voting for the Republicans' clean stopgap funding bill. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the federal layoffs would be made very soon. She said this morning that the numbers could be in the thousands. Take a listen.
Look, it's likely going to be in the thousands. It's a very good question, and that's something that the Office of Management and Budget and the entire team at the White House here, again, is unfortunately having to work on today. These discussions and these conversations, these meetings would not be happening if the Democrats had voted to keep the government open. We believe there will be a vote taking place tomorrow, and we hope that vote will lead to the government reopening. That's what the president wants to see, and that's what we're working on today.
While the government remains shut, the Trump administration is placing holds on some federal funding. Billions of dollars in projects have been paused or canceled. Here are the details on that.
The Department of Energy has announced more than 200 renewable energy projects are being canceled. The move, it says, will save taxpayers more than $7.5 billion. The administration says it will cut climate-related funding across 16 states, including for projects in California, New York, and Massachusetts. White House Budget Director Russ Vought described the cancellations as ending what he called green new scam funding. This comes as President Trump said on social media that Republicans should make use of the shutdown to clear out, quote, dead wood, waste, and fraud. Trump said billions could be saved. In New York City, $18 billion in federal support for the Hudson River Tunnel and the 2nd Avenue subway has been put on hold. Vought said the step was taken to ensure spending was not based on what he called unconstitutional DEI principles. The Transportation Department said Wednesday it was reviewing whether any unconstitutional practices were occurring at the two projects.
Unfortunately, the previous administration had loaded up every grant agreement with their own social justice priorities, none of which were required by statute.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul told reporters Wednesday that Washington has decided to put their interpretation of proper culture ahead of the country's needs.
President Trump will be meeting with Russ Vought, director of the Office of Management and Budget, amid the government shutdown. In a post on Truth Social today, Trump said he will meet with Vought and determine which of the many Democrat agencies he recommends cutting. Trump called most of the agencies a, quote, political scam, and said he and Vought will determine whether the cuts are temporary or permanent. He added that Democrats had given him this unprecedented opportunity by not voting in favor of a stopgap funding bill. In an interview with One American News set to air today, Trump also commented on his plan.
Well, there could be firings, and that's their fault, and it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could say, a lot of people are saying Trump wanted this, that I wanted this closing, and I didn't want it. But a lot of people are saying it because I'm allowed to cut things that should have never been approved in the first place, and I will probably do that.
Vought has said that federal workers could expect mass firings within a day or two. According to a memo circulated by his office, agencies should prepare for mass reduction in force plans. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at news.today@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'll cover more stories right after this break.